Hello, 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 and welcome to the Thrive in Tech podcast, where I have honest conversations with tech professionals to help you thrive in your tech career. I'm your host, Deirra Footman, and on today's episode, we're going to catch up. So, where have I been? If you've been following me for a while, you know I took a extended break from content creation. I did do a little bit here and there, but it was not my primary focus. If you're new here, again, my name is Deirra Footman, and I'm a network engineer and content creator. You may follow me on Twitter or Instagram at CCIE by 30. CCIE by 30 is my blog and pretty much platform that I've had for the past 8 years. That's shocking to say. It will be 8 years in February. And I primarily started the blog and my Twitter account to connect with other network engineers, other Black people in tech, Black women in tech, to share my personal career journey and things I was studying, stuff I was having trouble with at work, all of that type of stuff. But ultimately, to be the mentor I didn't have when I first started out in tech in 2010. For those of you who don't know, I started my career in Cisco and as a network engineer in high school, actually. I attended a vocational high school and we had the Cisco Networking Academy program. It was a 3-year program. We started out with A plus, and then back then the CCNA was divided into two exams. So the first exam was, I think it was the exam was the CCENT, but the class was just like Network Essentials or something like that. And then the second half of the class focused on the CCNA material. So completed that program in my senior year. I got a internship. That internship ultimately became my very first tech job that I stayed at for about 5 years. Um, and that's how I got into tech, and I've been here since 2010. During that time, there were not a lot of online communities like we have now. So, we have Twitter, we have TikTok, there's Instagram, there are dozens of Discords, Slack channels, meetups. A lot of that did not exist in 2010. We had a lot of forums where you could post and ask questions and kind of have discussions like that. But this really wide open highway of just tech information, firsthand experiences from people did not really exist back then. So your advice was pretty much limited to, your coworkers. If you went to college, maybe you had access to college professors, communities within the college setting, etc. But for me, with my first job being in the K through 12 industry, that's a very traditional career path. You're expected to, get a 4-year degree, maybe a master's. On the tech side, we were expected to get certifications, of course, and kind of just follow this very just linear stair step path of increasing your education, increasing your certifications, and with more seniority, you get, more responsibilities and you progress that way. Just a very traditional career path. For me personally, at that time, I was not interested in getting a college degree. Um, I had just finished high school. I wanted to take a break. I did ultimately want to get a degree. It just was not a priority at that time. So here I was about 3-ish years in. I'm starting to be a little bit more focused, a little bit more serious about my career because at this point I had a child. I wanted to make more money. And I really started to put thought into where I wanted to go long term. And at that time, there just weren't a lot of people to answer the questions around where I wanted to go. I knew these things existed. I just did not have the right people in my community to help me get there. So that is one main reason why I started my platform. Um, so through the years, of course, I'm posting content, I'm sharing my experiences. I've participated in podcast interviews, panels. I became a Cisco champion, which I'm very proud of. I ultimately just kind of morphed into this tech influencer. Um, I know people, they don't like that word, but that's pretty much what my platform grew into. And I was really enjoying it. I had a lot of great opportunities to um, speak, to have my content featured. I've written for other publications. I've gotten jobs because of my online presence, which was just really great. Um, and it was wonderful. And then during the pandemic, of course, we're all at home, we're all on our phones, we're scrolling, and that is when the tech content creation, tech influencer industry really blew up. Uh, I experienced exponential audience growth. I participated in social audio rooms, if you remember Clubhouse, of course, Twitter Spaces. I taught classes. I spoke on more panels. I participated in Tech Field Day, which was really, really great. Um, and, my audience pretty much exploded. I think from on Twitter in particular, from 2020 up until last year, I grew my audience from maybe 10, probably 10,000 right before the pandemic, and I'm at 30,000 now. So very grateful for all of that. But what started to happen during the pandemic was I found that we were having the same conversations in these settings. And I think these are very important conversations to have. Like, what do you need to put on your resume? The certification debates, do you need a degree to succeed in tech? I think there's definitely a place for those conversations, especially as a new person. But I started to feel like there's only so many times I can tell a story on how I got into tech. There's only so many times I can repeat the same advice about, what to put on your resume. Should you get the Net Plus or the CCNA? And the conversations just really became redundant for me to participate in. And I felt like I no longer had anything of value to add to these conversations. So I started to just kind of take a step back. Of course, this type of content, if you are a content creator or if you follow a lot of content creators, this is a type of content that people love. This is the content that really pushes accounts forward. The technical content, not so much. And that was another thing that I was struggling with. I did not want to lose the tech part of the tech influencer. Um, so I started to take a step back. Also at this point, there were a lot of people, as you grow your audience as a content creation creator, you hit a certain point where you start to think about monetizing your content. Content creation is a job. It takes time to write blog posts. It takes time to do YouTube channels, podcasts, all of this stuff. It does take time. It is a lot of work. So it's just logical for you to start to monetize this part of your career, essentially. if that is the path you choose to go down. I started looking at the common ways that people were monetizing their expertise. And it was a lot of courses, which that's definitely something I'm interested in. I just did not have the time to dedicate to do it the way I would want to do it. Um, Consultations, which I do still offer, but at that point I had tried consultations and it just didn't really, it just wasn't really the right fit. And there were other methods that just did not make sense to me at that time. So I'm a person who, if something doesn't feel right, I don't want to do it. I would rather take my time to step back and kind of observe, explore different ideas, and figure out what makes sense for me. So at about 2021, I started scaling back. I still did threads. I still would participate in spaces if asked, and if it was a topic that really made sense to me. But ultimately, I just took a step back and I decided to put myself in the audience seat and just really see and observe what was going on, what problems needed to be solved, what conversations weren't being had that I'm seeing people ask questions about. Um, and I just started taking notes on all of that. Also, during this time, I invested in a lot of coaching. I invested in classes related to marketing, social media, all of that type of stuff. I watched the very successful creators and took notes on their strategies and analyzed what was working for them. And during this time, I used my platform to really start sharing more about my personal interest, more of my personal opinion, and just kind of get to know people a little bit better beyond tech. Um, I also at the same time was going through a lot of just professional and personal changes. I was really trying to figure out what made sense to do next in my career. Had I have all of this experience. It was very clear that it was time to specialize. And I was really trying to figure out what specialization made sense based on my salary goals. Does it make sense to continue down a technical path? And what does that path look like? Or should I be focused on going down a management path? And what would that look like? I did pick back up on studying for my college degree. Shout out to WGU. And I just kind of took that time to watch, observe, listen, and learn. Once I kind of had a path down, that's how this podcast was born, right? So I knew that one, I want to keep CCIE by 30 as the technical vehicle for my content creation. So what does that mean? I want to continue to use my blog to share my certification journey, to talk about, lab write-ups, to really just really talk tech and the tech that I'm interested in. And since I've decided that my specialty is going to be security, network security in particular, that is what I want that platform, the blog to, represent. That is where all of the technical content will be. I want to, what am I building at work? What am I studying? What else am I learning? All of that type of stuff. And of course, before anyone asks, yes, I still plan to achieve my CCIE. It has always been a very important goal for me. I call it my personal Mount Everest, but it is definitely still on the plan. Um, I'm just taking a sip of water. So let's talk about Thrive in Tech, this podcast, and ultimately the community that I want to build with this. So I really wanted this. I've always wanted to do a podcast. I always thought it made sense. I enjoy podcasts. I have a lot to talk about. I enjoy interviewing people. During the pandemic, at the height of like Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, I really, really enjoyed the experience of leading and participating in those spaces and rooms. I really wanted this to just be organic and honest and fill a need within our community. As I watched just the conversations that were happening on social media, it became clear that the sweet spot is really the people who were in a similar boat that I was career-wise, the mid-level, trying to get to senior, trying to figure out what the next steps of their career looks like. And this is not to say that the conversations that we're going to have here aren't for beginners, but I just really saw a need that was not being fulfilled there. There's a lot of beginner content, both technical and non-technical. There's a lot of content geared towards senior people, both technical and non-technical. But there's just kind of that gap still exists for mid-level people, where you're starting, you have your feet under you, you have some skin in the game, but how to navigate office politics, um, really managing your money well. Um, if you come from an impoverished background, survival mode, and what does that look like, and how does that show up in your career? Uh, a lot of the conversations that come up that we don't think about until they're happening to us. And it's beyond just, oh, what certification to get, how many labs to do. Uh, all of those types of things were a gap that I saw. And there are people talking about it. I don't want to say that there's no one talking about it, but it, it's just not as plentiful as the beginner or senior content. So that's my goal with this podcast. I want to explore what happens after you land this tech job, the office politics, the unspoken rules, the guidance on career progression, navigating the workplace, addressing the financial aspects of it all, addressing mental health and burnout, and knowing when to take a step back. Again, survival mode. All of those things that just come with being a whole person and a whole engineer and really thriving in your career. Um, and also just building a community around that where we can have honest conversations, talk about things that are happening at work that you might need help navigating, from a personal branding aspect, getting people used to, speaking, giving presentations. I would like to, and I posted this on Twitter, take this community, and one of the events I want to host in this community is a monthly tech talk where individuals can come and present on a thing they built or they're learning or something they're working on at work, so they can build those communication skills, build those speaking skills, and just really gain the confidence to market themselves and build a personal brand, even if they don't want to be an influencer or a content creator or whatever. So that is my goal for this podcast. The majority of these episodes will be interviews with different professionals at all levels in their career, beginners, people mid-level, senior people, people with their own businesses. I wanted to really just talk to people from all different pathways, people who follow more traditional paths, people who, follow the certification path, people who pivoted into tech from another industry, and just really get their unique perspectives on what it took for them to feel like they were thriving in their tech careers. So that is the next chapter for me. I'm very happy to be back, very happy to be creating again, and feeling like I am using my voice to uplift and contribute to this wonderful community that we have all curated. I hope that you are as excited as I am to listen to the podcast and just really participate in the discussions that I intend to facilitate on the topics that we discuss here, and participate in the community that is coming to just really fill that gap and give everyone, the next generation of techies, if you will, tools that I certainly didn't have, that I had to feel my way around. I'm still feeling my way around for some of them. And I'm just really excited, and I hope you are too. The podcast is going to be available wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, pretty much everywhere. The website is, and I'm going to put all of these links in the show notes, so don't worry about, taking notes or anything like that. The website is thrivintechpod.com, and our social media handles are all Thrive in Tech Pod across uh, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok will be coming soon, as well as YouTube. I hope to get some video sessions going soon. And finally, something that I really wanted to do to kind of add a personal touch to the podcast, so we're not just talking about, the topic of the day, but to really just kind of give back. I want people to send in questions. Send in your career question, something that has you stumped, and it can be about any topic. And I want to answer those questions on the podcast, and also have a segment with our guests where they can give their perspectives. And the email for that is going to be thrivintechpod@gmail.com. Again, all of this will be in the show notes. And I am just really excited to start this next chapter, and I hope you are as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Share if anything here resonated with you. Tweet it, post it on Instagram, and tag us in it. And I am looking forward to what 2024 brings. So thank you for listening, and see you next time.